Everyone, my name is Josh and this is from School Industry Musings, and today I'm going to be talking about the fourth book in the Cormoran Strike series, Lethal White. So this particular novel takes place right after the events of the previous novel, Career of Evil, where Cormoran Strike has just apprehended Donald Langing, aka the Shacklewell Ripper, and he essentially the information becomes knowledgeable overnight, except for Robin, who during her wedding day she's been too busy, making preparations. And when Strike said he tried to call her, she didn't get any messages. So she comes to the conclusion that Matthew deleted the message just so he could protect her. He says he wanted to protect her from the trauma that she faced at the hands of the Shacklewell Ripper, which tied into a backstory at the halfway point of Career of Evil. So the prologue basically takes place, the entirety of the prologue takes place at the wedding of Robin Ellicott and Cormoran Strike. And I feel like this is one of the things that really is at the heart of this particular story. And I really do feel like what's very interesting about this entire setup is it really just shows how awkward Matthew Cunliffe and Robin are as a couple, because yes, they might seem like the ideal fit, and even at the beginning of The Cuckoo's Calling, the very first book, there is this moment where you're kind of thinking to yourself, they are moving too fast, they've gotten engaged far too quickly, they should have at least, gotten a lot of time to actually at least explore what they're like together and how they feel compatible to each other before they say I do. And that was one of the things that really hits Robin like an emotional wave when she actually goes to her wedding, because she thinks to herself, well, I don't even know the man I'm married. I don't even know, who he is. Like, he constantly is trying to control me, control my life, and things like that. And Matthew is one of those stereotypical guys who seems like he might seem like he has good intentions, but really he kind of just comes across as being just a total douchebag. And I could have said something far worse, but I feel like it wouldn't be very appropriate for YouTube. So yeah, I do think Matthew Cunliffe is probably my least favourite character because of how smug he can be and how judgmental he can be, and I just really hate him as a character, how arrogant he can be as well. I really do think he's one of the worst characters ever, and I think me and J.K. Rowling share that exact same sentiment because she hates Matthew as well. So I really do feel like she had the desired effect, where she wrote this character who is totally unlikable and everyone collectively doesn't like him. But he does have some redeemable qualities, or at least one that I can think of, and that comes in the next book, Trouble Blood, which I can't wait to talk about. I am going to be addressing a couple of things with that book, but I'm going to get to this one first. And with Lethal White, this one's a very interesting one because this takes place in the summer of 2012, which is when the London Olympics were taking place, and it involves an investigation into a PR campaign via the Houses of Parliament. So now Robin Ellicott and Cormoran Strike are now moving up in the world. They've gone from the fashion industry, a very small corner of the London and fashion industry scene, to the publishing industry, to the military, and now they're in the Houses of Parliament. They're in politics now. So that's a very interesting direction to go in. And that's what I like about this series. You never feel like it's repetitive. You always feel like every single industry that they explore is a fresh start. It's a new examination. It's a new insight into a world that not many people may know about. There might be a handful of people who might, say, for example, work in that industry. But for the most part, it's very, very fresh territory for both the readers and the characters. And I think that's very refreshing. So how does this entire storyline start? Well, during a routine easy day, shall we say, but with Cormoran and Robin, a strange man, a clearly mentally disturbed man by the name of Billy Knight, comes into Cormoran Strike's office wanting to speak to him, but he feels very nervous, he feels shaking, he has very weird facial tics where he likes to touch his nose to mouth and things like that, and wipe his nose and things like that on his hand or his knuckles, and he's very kind of, clearly mentally not very well, and he basically describes that he saw a little girl strangled years ago out in the middle of the fields. And this immediately gets the attention of Cormoran and Robin, and they immediately want to investigate. And it's during around this very same time that Cormoran Strike is hired by a cabinet official who is basically in the running to become a prime minister or a member of the House of Parliament, named Jasper Chiswell, who is electing to basically go into office, either go into the House of Parliament or become Prime Minister, essentially. He's vying for that and he's doing his campaign. So he basically has this feeling that he's being blackmailed, and he hires Cormoran Strike to pretty much, investigate the crime and see what's going on. Does this tie into Billy Knight's story about a child strangled? How far does this Chisel and Knight storyline go, and how deep is it? And I really do like this particular book. It really is a very interesting story. I like the character moments with Cormoran and Robin. I feel like they really are coming from a really strong. They really are, a great magnetic duo in this particular story. I really do like the fact that they do have funny back and forths. They have a lot of very interesting observations. But I really do think that every single time, it never feels like with this series, whenever a character gets the chance to investigate a crime, it never feels like, oh, this story is going to be more Cormoran's story, or this story is going to be more Robin's story. It always feels like every character has their chance to shine. It never feels like, oh, this is the Cormoran Strike novel. This is the Robin Ellicott novel. It never feels like that. It always feels like every single character has a chance to shine, and I really do like a lot of the characters. I like the new assistant, the Scottish guy. Sorry, I'm just going to look up the Wikipedia page very quickly just to make sure that I know all the names. Yeah, I like a lot of the characters in this particular version. I really do think they're all very compellingly well drawn. I like the fact that, there's an activist angle. Jimmy Knight is Billy's older brother, and he pretty much is. Whenever I read the books, I always imagine, much older characters than what's actually on the page. And I really do like it because when I watch the television adaptations, they always cast someone who's slightly younger than I imagined them being. And I really do like that idea that, you imagine them as somewhat, different on the page than what they are actually probably when they're being portrayed on screen. So I really do like that. But yeah, this was a very interesting story. I liked the fact that the Lethal White name has a little bit more of a relevance to the story, in the sense that it basically ties into the Chisel's backstory of how one of them lost a child prematurely during birth. In fact, it was the stepmother or the mother of the Chisel household who actually had the misfortune of losing a child. So that entire Lethal White syndrome is something that's at the heart of this particular novel as well, the idea of losing a child prematurely. And then, of course, that ties into the potential murder of what happened to this child that Billy says he saw strangled over by the fields. There's a lot of insights into the deeper connections of these characters and what have you. So I really do feel that that's very interestingly depicted. I also want to talk a little bit about, which I didn't touch on in the original Career of Evil novel. Cormoran Strike has a pretty, interesting backstory. He was a veteran in the Afghan War, and he pretty much got his leg blown off. But when he was a child, he was basically from a broken home. They moved from place to place. He was basically the product of a single parent by the name of Leda Strike, and him and his sister Lucy, his half sister Lucy, were basically going around with her from place to place, being dropped off at various other places by Leda, pretty much because she's a groupie. She likes to go out partying, she likes to go out drinking, she likes to go out and take drugs. And Johnny Rokeby is essentially the it's hinted at that he could be the biological son of, or that Strike could be the biological son of him, and he's an arsehole. Whether you're talking about the book or the film or the television adaptation, every single version of Johnny Rokeby is pretty much depicted as an arsehole. He's kind of like Mick Jagger, but if you removed all the likability from him, essentially, that's essentially who this character is, and he's an arsehole. And throughout the majority of the novel, especially in the next book, there's a lot of hints and insights that, you know, he wants to reconnect with Cormoran, and I really, really hate that. The fact that he basically had nothing to do with him. He wanted nothing to do with him when he was broke and practically living in his office. But then when he goes and he gets famous, he has all these cases. People immediately want to know who he is. People immediately want him to, you know, open up and for him to meet with them and things like that. It's the same with Charlotte. Like, as soon as, like, when he was broke and living in his office and he was struggling with his finances, didn't want to know him, couldn't throw him, couldn't you know, throw him away far enough. But when it comes to him being famous and solving the Lou Landry case, the Owen Quine case, the Shacklewell Ripper case, and now the Lethal White Chiswell Knight case, she immediately, you know, says, oh, well, maybe we should get back together. Maybe I'm thinking about, you know, leaving my husband and raising my twin daughters on my own and things like that. And I just think a couple of installments ago, you didn't even want to know him, but I heard from a comment from one of my subscribers that it does get better. She does get more interesting, and she does actually have at least a little bit of justification for why she is the way she is. And I'm starting to see that, having read a little bit of The Ink Black Heart, but I'll get round to it when I cover it. But yeah, this book is incredible. It's a 5 read for me. I loved the tying up of all the loose ends. It pretty much is a closed circle novel in it's pretty much a closed circle novel, because even though there are a multitude of suspects in all these different arenas, you're mostly focusing on this main family, which is the Chiswell family unit, and it's their, you know, drama, it's their, you know, seedy interweaving relationships that are at the center of the story. So it's kind of like a closed circle, and that's very interesting, because usually very few novels have this kind of approach, because you are going from you're going to all these different suspects and all these other different things. So I really like the fact that J.K. Rowling tried to, you know, make a closed circle type story, but there is still that hint that there could be potential suspects, or there could be an entire web of criminals and all these other things that could be involved in this case. How far does this backstory go? And I really kind of found myself thinking, oh, it was very satisfying. Like, the ending to this book is actually really satisfying. It has the girl with the dragon tattoo effect on me, where if you've read the novel, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the ending is pretty much, you know, they're trying to investigate the disappearance of a girl who is part of this larger family. But then when it turns up that she's alive and well, and there's no real suspense or no real thrilling action, you're kind of left thinking to yourself, oh, is that it? Like, is that basically the ending? That's where she is, and she's safe, she's okay, she's, you know, grown up to have children of her own and things like that. Like, is that it? Like, I found myself always kind of disappointed, even though I did respect Stieg Larsson from going in that direction. It did feel like, oh, it didn't really have that much suspense to it. It was just like, oh, this happened, and it just ends abruptly. Whereas with Lethal White, I felt like it was handled a little bit better. I felt like it really could have, you know, tied up all those loose ends very well. And it didn't feel like she cheated us. It didn't feel like she was, you know, or I wouldn't say it cheated, but I felt like it didn't really feel like, oh, is that it? It felt like, oh, that actually ties up everything very nicely. And to some people, it might be a little too nicely. But to me, it's just nicely enough to want to move on and see what these characters do next. And yeah, I really did enjoy this book. And let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. Did you like this book? Have you read any of the Cormoran Strike series? And if not, do you want to read it now? And what would be your favourite book in the Cormoran Strike series? So yeah, this has been Joshua with Whimsical and Interesting Musings. I hope you're all having a very good day. Take care. Bye-bye for now.